Hello, and welcome back to Truth-Based Relationships, the podcast. I'm Juan Andrés, your host, and today we will be diving into what is our relationship with conflict. And this is something that is very connected with the dimension of responsibility of the authentic self relationships model. And I want to reflect on this with you because we usually don't have a very good relationship with conflict. We tend to avoid it. We tend to associate that with unsafety. We've been talking lately in previous episodes about how much we need safety as a baseline. And again, my recommendation is always to keep that survival element of safety always as something that you can provide for yourself and not demand it from others or not even expect it from others. So in that sense, we can understand the way our responsibility functions in that relationship to conflict. Because when we are trying to avoid the conflict, we tend to go into this dynamic of having a perpetrator, having a victim, having a problem that needs to be solved. And we are not necessarily experiencing this togetherness in spite of conflict. That is what we were discussing in the previous episode. So to put it in very simple terms, we're going to go through the different pathways that are around responsibility of the authentic self relationships model. And to start with, we can start understanding what happens when we are feeling responsible of other people's feelings. When we are reacting in this usually defensive state of reacting towards somebody's conflict, let's say somebody's feelings not being wanted, because that's the baseline, right? We believe that, for example, sadness is an unwanted feeling. We believe that if somebody is sad, it's a problem we have to solve. We don't want that sadness there. So in this logic of avoiding conflict, we see, for example, someone feeling sad, and because we don't want that anymore in our experience, we try to dismiss that. We try to, in a way, solve it or eliminate it, but we do it in different ways. So if somebody's feeling sad and I'm feeling responsible of their thoughts and feelings, my attitude is acting from guilt because I don't want to be the perpetrator when I'm feeling responsible for their feelings. And then I'm basically saying, I don't like to be in the perpetrator role. You shouldn't feel the way you're feeling. So we are actually rejecting the other person's reality. We are invalidating the other person's feelings when we are saying that you shouldn't be feeling that way. And this is usually what happens when we go into defensiveness. We say, no, oh, you're not getting me. You shouldn't be feeling like that. No, this was my intention. You're not getting me how I was coming through. And again, you shouldn't be feeling this. And you did this the other time. And sometimes we can even include the other person's behavior. It's like, oh, but you did it like this before. So how can you be feeling like that with me? And all these attitudes that go into trying to dismiss the other person's feelings are just because we want to avoid the conflict. We want to be away from the role of the perpetrator. And this is because we have this unhealthy relationship to conflict in which we cannot take it as part of our reality. We don't have incorporated in our systems that we can be together in spite of conflict. So we tend to defend ourselves, and in the process, we are invalidating the other person's feelings. That is the last thing that the other person actually wants. So that's one end, when we are in a defensive attitude by staying in a space of guilt or blame by being responsible of other people's thoughts and feelings. What happens in the other unwanted pathway that takes us away from the authentic self in the ASR model, and is when we are expecting other people to be responsible of our thoughts and feelings. Now, the conflict is that the other person is not responding to our unwanted experience in the way we would like. So we are taking the victim role, expecting other people to take responsibility of what we're feeling, because we don't want to be in the conflict of having unwanted feelings. And we go into the strategy that the other one needs to save us or the other one needs to fix it. So we become in the victim role. We make them the perpetrator. And we are saying, how could you do that to me? Don't you know that I feel this way? Don't you know me at all? Don't you love me? Why would you even do this? And the more we go into these expectations and these demanding statements, we are telling the other one, you are not behaving in the proper way. You should be different. So we're also, in a way, rejecting the other person's behavior. We are saying the other one should change. The other one is not enough. They are not capable to connect with your thoughts and feelings, because you're creating a moment of, again, rejecting what happened. And this rejection of what happens is actually what leads us to the understanding of anger. Sometimes anger is the first feeling that we approach when we are actually in rejection of reality. For me, this is actually the biggest wisdom we need to get out of feeling anger. If you are feeling anger, you are saying no to something. In a way, it's a boundary. In a way, it's a clear statement of saying no. And that is very needed. That feeling of anger, if you translate it into what are you saying no to, you actually are getting an understanding of what are your needs deep behind. Because when you are saying no to something, there is underneath something that you would like to say yes to. And this is the pathway that we need to go into to move away from rejecting reality into accepting reality. But it doesn't happen so easily. So the first thing is that we have to understand every time you say no to something, you are creating an energetic knot. If you don't say yes to something at the same time, you are going to stay in that knot. So my suggestion is that every time you feel you're saying no to something, try to see what are you saying yes to instead. And this is the only way you're going to move away from the energetic knot. If I'm saying no to feeling sad and sorry for myself, for example, you are saying yes to what? Sometimes this can be confusing because you can say yes to, I want to feel confident and I want to feel happy. But maybe that is not something that you can reach, you can achieve in that moment. And then you keep on rejecting reality. Because why I cannot just be happy? Why cannot I just be confident? And then you keep on rejecting reality. So when you actually have to say yes to something, you have to say yes to something that allows you to move. So maybe in this case, I want to say yes to accept my state. And this is exactly what happens when we move to accepting rejected reality, or let's say to accept unwanted reality, that is the grieving. And we go into the grieving of the unwanted reality. And this is what happens when we are shifting from the anger of I don't want reality as it is into the sadness of saying it's sad that things are the way they are. But then I'm accepting things the way they are. This is why it's the grieving. This is why it's what happens when even someone dies. At the beginning, we reject it. We don't want to connect with that. And you have like these 5 stages of grieving that you can look more into. But the clear transition, for me, the most drastic move is from the anger towards the sadness. From the anger that is rejecting reality to the sadness that is what allows you to reach the final stage, that is acceptance. And this is coming from the grieving. And why this is important? Because when you are, again, moving away from what you're saying no to, you are moving into what you're saying yes to, or even what you would like to say yes to. So the movement actually is to allow yourself to hold yourself in the lack of something, in the absence of the yes. You see, so even you are saying yes to holding yourself in the grief of not having what you would like. And this is what allows you to be very present and accepting the unwanted reality. And the grief is what is going to allow you to do that. If you connect with the beauty even that is connected in the acceptance of reality, you will be holding yourself you will be accepting the conflict, and you will no longer reject the conflict. And the conflict is usually, again, rejection of reality. So now we can take this in the application of the model, just to go a bit further into how to use these pathways. So you realize that you are, for example, taking responsibility of other people's feelings. And this is the part of you that is realizing that you're acting from guilt and that you're rejecting reality. And you just cannot get out from there. So this is what we have to understand. Everything I'm telling you is not something that I expect you to apply or to learn and to apply right away. As I was saying before in other chapters, I don't believe we are robots. I don't believe that because we understand something, we can apply it right away. This model, you can apply it, especially by studying yourself and your behavior every time you feel like you are moving away from the authentic self. And in that sense, it functions from just observing your body and how you respond to things. So every time something feels off after your interaction with someone, or maybe in your interaction with someone, whenever you have the chance of being aware and observe what happened, you can say, okay, I felt off. Where was I acting from in these different dimensions? And this is when you observe how you can explore that. So in this case, as I was telling you, if you feel responsible for someone else's feelings, you are stuck in guilt because you couldn't get away from the state of rejection of reality. And as I was saying before, let's say if the other person was sad after you made a comment, you are feeling, again, responsible, and you want that to be eliminated. So how can you apply this whole model in that sense? So you will realize, okay, I stood in the space of guilt. I couldn't get out of that. And again, I will go then in the self-work section. Remember, we have this symbol of reflection in this pathway from my responsibility into their truth, their thoughts and feelings, from my responsibility to their thoughts and feelings, from blame and guilt. So that symbol of reflection is what takes you to the self-work section. And then is when you're going to start exploring these layers. Okay, so you will go into the first tip of the iceberg, that again is what is my fear. So then this is the part that is interesting, because it's when you start understanding your own behavior and you ask yourself, what am I afraid of? Or what was I afraid of in this moment of staying in the guilt? And maybe the fear was that this other person is going to like you less or love you less or want to spend less time with you because you believe that they are not feeling, again, safe enough if there is any sense of conflict. And we go back again to this idea of what is our relationship to conflict. And this may be something that we want to explore in the co-creation. And this is, again, what we have discussed in the previous session, and I can mention a bit more later on. So if we understand that fear, then we can even go even deeper and realize what is the wound behind. And maybe the wound can be our upbringing. And I think it's quite common that we may have experienced an upbringing that is very connected with punishment and reward. And if we were brought up in a sense that attitudes that were acceptable or appropriate were praised or rewarded, and attitudes or behaviors that were considered inappropriate or unwanted by our caregivers or authority figures, we would be punished. And this is, again, what comes from the mindset of morality. So it's the other dimension that is fitting our belief system. We were conditioned in a way that tells us what is the right way to do things and what is the wrong way to do things. So we can realize that we, in our upbringing, we may have been very much conditioned with this sense of reward and punishment. And maybe we were punished every time somebody would feel sad or hurt by our behavior or actions. And then it's very common, again, if we start thinking about it, how people go into this culture of, in a way, giving responsibility of someone else's feelings when something happens. So you can even imagine, like, a teacher can say, why would you do that to your classmate? Don't you see that she's sad now? Why would you make her sad? And you see, and this is a very, very important thing to understand, you cannot make someone feel a certain way. You see, you can try to predict somebody's behavior as much as possible, but there's always going to be chances. If you want to, it's like, put yourself in the other sense. Like when you want to make somebody happy, you see, it's like somebody, again, the same thing with relationship with the conflict, right? So somebody's feeling sad and we want to cheer them up. So you want to make them happy. How many times that actually succeeds? You may not feel that capable of just even intentionally, when you even want to make someone change their emotional state, you can try your best, but there's so many other variables. You cannot just do that willingly. So we have to understand that we don't have full control. We don't have any control, actually, to the other people's thoughts and feelings. Again, we are fully responsible of our actions, but we cannot be responsible of the interpretation of reality of someone else. How someone may interpret our behavior and connect that with their perception of reality, with their mindset at that time, with their emotional state, with their association with whatever memories they were having, or the movie they saw last night. All these things affect us in the way we respond to stimuli in life. So this is why you cannot be responsible of the other person's thoughts and feelings, because it happens as the interpretation of reality and not a direct consequence of reality. So this is what we need to understand. And if we see that, we are going to realize that we can actually either make people feel a certain way. So then we can also tell someone, you made me feel this way, because then we're telling them that they have the power to make you feel the way they want to. You see? And then somebody could just mention, hey, but what about manipulation? Okay, so somebody in manipulation, yeah, somebody's definitely trying to make you do things or make you feel things intentionally. And if manipulation, for example, is something that you don't condone, or let's say it's something that is away from your own boundaries, you can say that a boundary of yours is not to engage with manipulative behavior or people. That's, again, your boundary. So this is, remember, it's a self-empowering model. This is not a moralistic script to give someone else and to say, well, you shouldn't be this way. If you feel that someone over the period of time, or even in one behavior, is feeling manipulative for you, well, maybe that requires a reality check. So that's something to explore and to get to know them and to see, again, the compatibility and to see how much you need to state boundaries. But at the end of the day, when you are working with people that you, in a co-created sense, you want to be together, you want to grow together, you understand the vision of what we've been saying before, that you don't want to hurt the other one intentionally, that you are doing your best every time. We'll be having reality checks whenever things don't feel right. But it's not because we go into this space of I disbelieve that the other person is wishing the best for me. I can see that in the moment of behavior, it doesn't feel right. And this may be a time to even state a boundary. But when we become regulated, again, we can talk about these things. And even manipulative behavior can be a pattern that someone has. And as long as we are aware of that, and both people in the relationship are aware of these patterns, when we have ideally an understanding that the person with the pattern is taking some responsibility of that and working on it, and the person receiving the behavior or the pattern will have enough confidence to enact boundaries whenever it's needed, then you can still grow even with that behavior. Because then there's a huge aspect that we can go into about what are our shadows and what are the behaviors that we don't like. in ourselves. So I think we can all be at some times manipulative, or at any time we can be perceived, let's say, as manipulative, or perceived as selfish or disregarding. And all these things can happen when we get dysregulated, and in a way our inner child is throwing a tantrum, in simple terms. So again, so coming back with this example of the teacher that I was saying, that somebody can just, again, judge you to make someone feel that way. That is the idea of punishment that you had because somebody felt sad. And this is why it creates a wound, because we didn't want that to happen. It's very rare that we actually, with the people that we want, again, we're talking about relationships in which we're co-creating and we want the best for each other, we actually don't want the other one to feel sad. So when somebody punishes us because the other person felt in a way we were not expecting, or we even didn't want that to happen, we become completely constricted, and we become in a catch-22 kind of space, because we don't understand what happened, and we don't understand why are we supposed to feel blamed and punished for something that we didn't intend. So this is very important to understand, because that can be, again, the wound that I'm telling you. Again, we're still exploring the layers. We saw the fear, now we're exploring these wounds. And in this case, the wound of my behavior of, again, feeling guilt and being responsible of other people's feelings is that I was conditioned in my upbringing, in my settings when I was younger, and I was punished every time somebody would feel sad or hurt or affected after a behavior of mine. And especially if that was something that you were not capable to control, or it was not part of your intentions, that punishment creates the fear of you cannot control your reality. So then we go into these bigger structures that are away from our authenticity, because they're going into control. So again, we go into morality. We preserve the mindset of morality because we are not believing that even approaching truth is possible. If we have been raised in an understanding that morality is the only way to live, to understand what is the right or wrong behavior in each situation, we are not allowing ourselves to access truth in every moment. So this is what is going to change. This is what I'm inviting you to do. But the wound happened because you didn't, or you were not allowed to express your truth, and that was not taken into consideration with the events. Maybe you didn't have the chance to express how much you didn't intend that. Again, if the teacher or a parent would have actually asked you, hey, so what happened? Your classmate is sad. How was it for you? What happened? And you can still initially feel this sense of guilt because maybe you had that conditioning already there, but maybe the teacher or the parent can ask, so what did you do? And did you think they were going to feel sad with what you did? And most likely the kid is going to say, no, I didn't expect that to happen. I just did this or that. And then the teacher or the parent can again say, okay, so this is what happened because it's their sensitivity. And now we see that this can happen sometimes and people can feel sad away from our expectations and without us being able to control that. And in that time, for me, it's important that we focus our energies more in repair and reconnection and not in the punishment. So maybe this is the time to say, hey, maybe you can go and check how they're doing. Maybe you can say that you're sorry that they're feeling bad. That is not the same to say, well, I'm sorry I did something that hurt you, because it was not intentional. It's a different sense of it's regretting what happened and not necessarily apologizing. So then for me, this is a different attitude to have, that you're allowing to incorporate truth into what happened and not just create punishment or reward from a mindset of morality. So then you realize that these are the fears and the wounds that are carrying our pattern of, defending every time that we see somebody being hurt or sad after our behavior. So again, what are the needs that are at the top of this iceberg that we're exploring? The needs in this case are connection, sense of shared reality, even being heard or seen, and you see what other needs you may need. Because that's exactly what we need to realize in our own self-exploration, so we can actually enter the space of co-creation. Because then if we're changing the way we behave and we change the way we deal with conflict, we realize that, again, if we start believing that we cannot be responsible of the other person's feelings, we can actually, then we go into being responsible of our thoughts and feelings. So then we observe, and then we see this person being sad. And because we're being responsible of our thoughts and feelings, we connect with the love, we connect with the care towards that person. We leave guilt aside, and we allow ourselves to respond in which way it comes naturally to respond when we see someone we care for or we love when they're feeling sad. And then we can actually go away from the mindset of morality, and we actually go into a mindset of truth, in which we're going to explore what is the truth, what is really happening, from curiosity and from humility. And then actually we're also giving from generosity. In the heart space dimension, we are giving because we're generously wanting to be there, because our thoughts and feelings are irradiating care, love, and support. If we are feeling, I'm giving you an example. So if this is happening, you are actually moving into generosity. You're not anymore giving from duty, saying, okay, I have to apologize, because if I apologize, then the other person will stop being mad at me, and then I will be back into safety, and I will not be put in the spot of the perpetrator. Now, this is also another dynamic in the giving that is from duty, that is self-demanding, because you're not taking care of yourself and you're depleting your energy, and you're just doing that to receive something back. And again, it's the counterpart of morality, because we have those beliefs. So if we integrate all of these things, if we actually take responsibility of our thoughts and feelings, we connect with the care and the love for the other person, we allow ourselves to go into the common space with a mindset towards truth, from curiosity and humility, in which we are giving our space and our time and energy from generosity, then we can have a reality check. And then we will see, okay, what happened for you? I'm really curious about what you're experiencing. And you can, again, check what's happening, and then the other person can express their perception. And again, and you will create a communication. You will co-create a space in which you are both co-creating reality. And you will see, again, the reality checks. Yeah, when you said that, I felt this, and this is the story in my head. And the other person receives that as watching a movie, and not, again, take responsibility of their thoughts and feelings, or reacting from guilt, but connecting with their own thoughts and feelings and saying, okay, how do you feel when you receive this reality check? And then how you can give your own reality check by what you experience, and you connect with that. So the more you do these things, you are creating the communication that allows you to explore the truth, that allows you to connect with the mindset that is exploring what's really happening from curiosity and humility, and we're not perpetuating the patterns of punishment or reward, and just believing that we need to do the right thing in each moment. Because we don't want to live by scripts. We don't want to know one commandment of how to have a successful relationship. We want to have relationships based on truth. That's my invitation, truth-based relationships that are based on the curiosity of who we are, and to see how much we match. And it's connected with the compatibility we experience every time that we realize that, hey, we can actually understand each other. And this is, again, a different relationship with conflict, in which we embrace that. We allow ourselves to be in the togetherness in spite of conflict. And then we move and transition from the rejection of reality, in that fear and even in the anger of rejecting reality, into accepting reality from the grief that many times is needed when things are not happening the way we would like. So even if we have these reality checks, even if you have this communication, sometimes somebody can feel very sad. It's like they can say, for example, I've been having this conversation with you several times, and I don't feel that you are really seeing me. I don't feel that you really get the way I function. They can say, every time that I try to share, even with reality checks, how I function and what I would like in these different cases, or what would make me feel as a behavior, not as a person, what would make me feel in my perception in this state or the other, I still see that you don't connect with these things so much. And again, and the story in my head can be, for example, that you don't care enough for me. But bottom line, when we understand compatibility, we have to let go of this idea of, if they would love me enough, they would be able to do this. If they cared enough, they would be able to do that. This is the moment we realize that compatibility is connected with our people having resources that are matching our needs or even our strategies, and we are co-creating. How much are we compatible even to co-create with others? And again, many of the times, hopefully the least times, is going to happen that it's going to be disappointing that someone is the way they are. And we can have these perceptions. We can say, yes, I would love that, in very simple terms. Like, I would love that you would enjoy gardening more, because that's something that is such a big passion for me, or is something that is a common way for me to spend my time, and I would love your presence around me. And the other person is not into gardening at all. And away from going into, again, trying to reassess strategies and going into needs, that is a lot of what we expressed we talked about in the previous episode. For me, the important thing is that at one point, it may be just a lack of compatibility. So when I realize that, okay, so maybe if I want a relationship with this person, I need to accept that gardening, for example, is not an important thing for them, and I will not have that as something that I share with this person. And that can feel very sad for me. But if I stay in the anger, I'm going to be in the rejection of reality. And I can say, oh my God, like, you never even tried. Have you ever put your hands on the wet soil? Look at how good it feels. Why are you so close with this? Why are you not trying? Why are you not making an effort? And this is also another thing important to connect with. Again, sometimes we can, again, expecting other people to be responsible of our thoughts and feelings, and we are demanding this effort that is like, you have to do the effort. And this is maybe connecting with transaction and compromise, that again is a bit of something we're going to explore in a next episode. But it's important to realize that when we are demanding, we are not actually observing the truth for what it is. We are expecting somebody to function from a sense of morality, or we're expecting other people to be responsible of our thoughts and feelings. So instead of going in this anger, as I was saying, of rejecting and demanding the other one to be different, this is when we can go into the sadness that says, yeah, they don't like gardening, and that's sad for me. But that will allow you to grieve it and not to keep demanding it. And then you accept the reality. And once you incorporate that, when you know that it's sad that the other one doesn't connect with something that for you is important, also you stop fixating with that so much. So then you accept that. It's like, really, like when somebody dies, when you finally can accept that, you can even miss them sometimes. You can sometimes think about them, but it's not necessarily that you are kind of rejecting the fact that they're not alive anymore. You're not questioning that. You're accepting that, and you connect with the sadness and the feelings around that. So that is when it happens, and it allows you to connect with your life in the overall sense as well. So you can connect with the other elements in the relationship that are still there, and not to keep fixating with this one particular thing that is upsetting that they don't share with you. When we accept unwanted reality from grief, we can actually focus on the overall relationship we have, and we can actually understand and connect with our compatibility as a whole, and celebrate what we have in common and grieve what we don't have in common. And that again allows you to have the best possible relationship you can have with that person. And you will not get stuck in the rejection of reality that is expecting to have what you are not having with this person. And when you make that assessment of compatibility, and you know what is the best relationship you can have with this person, you can actually determine how much time and energy do I want to invest in this relationship? What kind of commitment are we going to have that is based on the compatibility we have to experience our connection over the period of time? So I will leave you with this for now. I invite you to connect with your needs, with your strategies, with your vision. Ask yourself, how do you relate with conflict? How much you embrace conflict to actually enrich your relationships? How much are you bringing these notions to the co-creation to see if other people also embrace conflict in a way that allows growth and co-creation or not? And then how to move again from the anger of rejecting reality to the grief that allows you to accept unwanted reality and then assess compatibility as you need to develop the relationships in the best way possible. This is Truth-Based Relationships, the podcast. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.